What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars walks onto a morning talk show expecting a friendly chat, only to face a barrage of invasive questions and condescending remarks that push her to the breaking point? In just 35 seconds, a routine celebrity interview spirals into complete chaos, ending with Margot Robbie storming off the set, leaving Savannah Guthrie speechless and the entire Today Show panel in absolute shock. The studio lights were blazing hot that morning as Margot settled into the familiar couch, flashing her signature warm smile to the cameras. The set looked exactly as it always did, bright and welcoming, with its cheerful color scheme and comfortable furniture designed to put guests at ease. She had been on this show countless times before, always bringing charm and grace to promote her latest projects. The makeup artist had just finished touching up her face. The producers had given her the usual friendly welcome, chatting about the weather and complimenting her outfit, and the energy in the studio felt light and cheerful. Everything seemed normal, routine, just another day of press rounds. But today would be different. Very different. What was about to unfold would shock everyone in that room. The cameras started rolling, the red lights flickering to life as the show went live. Margot waved to the audience at home, her expression warm and genuine. She had no idea what was about to unfold. Savannah opened with what seemed like a harmless question. "So Margot, let's talk about your new film. But first, I think our viewers are dying to know about something else. There have been rumors circulating about your personal life, and I think it's time we address the elephant in the room." Margot's smile faltered slightly. She shifted in her seat, clearly not expecting this opening. "Oh, well, I'm here to talk about the movie, which I'm incredibly passionate about. Our director really pushed us to explore some really challenging themes, and the entire cast brought such depth to their characters. It was truly a collaborative—" Right, the movie," Savannah interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. The gesture was sharp, almost contemptuous. "But come on, you know what people really want to hear about. The tabloids have been saying you've been difficult to work with on set, that you've demanded special treatment. Some reports say you've been showing up in your own trailer, refusing to share with other cast members, insisting on certain foods that aren't available to everyone else. Care to comment on that?" The other hosts, Hoda and Craig, exchanged uncomfortable glances. You could feel the tension immediately shift in the studio. Margot took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. You could see her mentally counting to 3, she choosing her words carefully. "I'm not sure where you're getting that information, Savannah, but it's simply not true. I work very hard to create a collaborative environment with every cast and crew member. I make it a point to learn everyone's names, to thank people for their work, to be available and present. I think if you spoke to anyone I've actually worked with, from the director to the production assistants, they'd tell you a very different story. In fact, my last 3 directors have publicly said they'd work with me again in a heartbeat." "Would they, though?" Savannah leaned forward, her voice dripping with skepticism. Her eyes narrowed, and there was something almost predatory in her expression. "Because we've heard from sources, multiple sources who were on set, that you've been throwing tantrums, showing up late, and making unreasonable demands. That doesn't sound very collaborative to me. That sounds like someone who's let fame go to their head." Hoda tried to interject, her voice gentle but firm. "Savannah, maybe we should take a step back here. This feels like it's getting a bit heated, and I'm not sure these unnamed sources are—" "I'm just asking the questions our viewers want answered," Savannah snapped at her co-host before turning back to Margot. Her tone was defensive now, almost aggressive. "So, are you saying all these reports are lies? Are you calling these people liars? Because that's a pretty serious accusation to make." Margot's jaw tightened. She was still trying to remain professional, but the strain was beginning to show. "I'm saying that I don't recognize that version of myself at all. I've been in this industry for over a decade, and I've built my reputation on professionalism and kindness. I'm proud of the work environment I help create. I've won awards, yes, but I'm equally proud of the relationships I've built and the friendships I've made, The people who've told me that working with me made their job easier, not harder. That's what matters to me. Interesting, Savannah said with a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. Because that's not what we've been hearing. In fact, some people are saying you've become quite the diva. That the success has gone to your head. That you're not the same person you were when you first started out. That you've changed. Us, and not for the better. Craig cleared his throat loudly, shifting in his seat. He looked visibly uncomfortable, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced with obvious concern. Hey, why don't we talk about the actual film? I heard the action sequences are incredible. And the story itself, from what I understand, deals with some really important themes. Margot, maybe you could tell us about your character's journey. But Savannah wasn't backing down. She completely ignored Craig's attempt to change direction. We'll get to that, but I think it's important we address these serious allegations first. Margot, do you think you've changed since becoming famous? Do you think you've lost touch with reality? With normal people? Do you even remember what it's like to not have everything handed to you? Excuse me? Margot's voice was steady, but you could hear the edge creeping in. Her eyes flashed with something between hurt and anger. I don't appreciate what you're insinuating. You've invited me here under the pretense of promoting my work, but instead, you're launching personal attacks based on anonymous sources and gossip. This isn't an interview. This is an ambush. And I'm starting to wonder if this was your plan all along. I'm just doing my job as a journalist, Savannah retorted, her voice getting louder. She was leaning forward now, her body language aggressive, asking tough questions. If you can't handle a little scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be in the spotlight. Maybe you should think about whether this career is right for you. Hoda jumped in again. Savannah, this feels a bit aggressive. Margot is our guest. And as our guest, she should be willing to answer legitimate questions. Savannah fired back. She turned to Margot again. Let's talk about your appearance. You've been very open about not conforming to Hollywood standards, yet you've had work done. Haven't you? Isn't that a bit hypocritical? The studio went completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. The sound technician's jaw dropped. The atmosphere shifted from uncomfortable to absolutely mortified in seconds. Margot's eyes widened in disbelief. Her hands gripped the edge of the couch cushion. I'm sorry, what did you just ask me? You heard me, Savannah said coldly, not backing down even an inch. You preach about natural beauty and being yourself. But you've clearly had cosmetic procedures. Our viewers deserve honesty. They deserve to know if you're being real with them or if it's all just another Hollywood facade. That is completely out of line, Margot said, her voice shaking with restrained anger. Her face had turned red, not from embarrassment, but from the effort of keeping her composure. My medical history, my personal choices about my own body, are none of your business. And they're certainly not relevant to this interview about a film I've worked incredibly hard on. Everything about you is relevant when you're a public figure, Savannah shot back. You can't have it both ways. You can't enjoy the perks of fame and then hide behind privacy when it's convenient. Craig tried once more to redirect. Ladies, maybe we should take a breath here and... Stay out of this, Craig, Savannah snapped without even looking at him. Margot, let's talk about your marriage. There are whispers that things aren't as perfect as you pretend they are on social media. Want to address that? No, I don't, Margot said firmly, her hands gripping the armrests of the couch. This has gone way too far. I came here in good faith to discuss a project that my team and I have poured our hearts into, and you've turned this into a tabloid ambush. Oh, please, Savannah rolled her eyes dramatically. Don't play the victim. You knew what you were signing up for when you became an actress. If you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you should go back to Australia and leave Hollywood to people with thicker skin. Hoda gasped audibly. Savannah, that's enough. But Savannah continued, her voice dripping with contempt. I'm tired of celebrities like you coming on this show, expecting us to just fawn all over you, asking softball questions while you promote whatever project you need us to sell for you. You think you're special? You think you're above answering real questions? Margot stood up abruptly, her microphone still attached. The cord pulled taut for a moment before she reached down to disconnect it. Her movements were deliberate, controlled, even though you could see the emotion churning just beneath the surface. I think this interview is over. Sit down, Savannah commanded, her voice sharp and authoritative. She stood up too, matching Margot's energy. We're not finished. You don't get to walk away from me. Yes, we are, Margot replied calmly, though her face was flushed. I will not sit here and be disrespected like this. I came here to have a conversation, not to be interrogated and insulted. You're being dramatic, Savannah laughed mockingly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle any criticism. You're so used to everyone telling you how wonderful you are that the moment someone asks you a real question, you fall apart. Craig stood up too. Savannah, you need to stop. This isn't okay. Don't tell me how to do my job, Savannah snapped at him. She looked back at Margot. What? Are you going to storm off now? Going to run away like a child? How very professional of you. Professional? Margot's voice rose for the first time, echoing through the studio. You want to talk about professionalism? You've spent the last 10 minutes hurling accusations and insults at me. You've questioned my work ethic, my appearance, my marriage, my character. All based on what? Rumors? Gossip? Anonymous sources that you won't even name? I'm asking questions the public wants answered, Savannah insisted, her arms crossed defensively. No, you're being cruel for the sake of ratings, Margot countered, her voice steady and strong now. Every word was measured and deliberate. You're hiding behind the guise of journalism to justify bullying. When you're using your position of power to attack someone who came here in good faith. And I won't participate in it. I refuse to legitimize this behavior by sitting here another second. Hoda reached out toward Margot. Margot, please, we can take a break and... There's nothing to take a break from, Margot said, beginning to remove her microphone. I'm leaving. Of course you are, Savannah said with a bitter laugh. Run away. That's what people like you do when things get difficult. You live in your privileged bubble, and the moment reality intrudes, you can't cope. People like me, Margot repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. The entire room seemed to lean in, waiting. What exactly do you mean by that? Please, enlighten me. Enlighten everyone watching at home. You know exactly what I mean, Savannah said, leaning back in her chair with a satisfied smirk. Her posture was defiant, almost challenging. One, entitled celebrities who think the world owes them something, who expect everyone to treat them like royalty, who throw a tantrum when they don't get their way. You waltz in here with your designer clothes and your perfect hair, expecting softball questions and adoration. The irony of Savannah calling someone else entitled wasn't lost on anyone in the studio. Several crew members were shaking their heads in disbelief. One producer had her hand over her mouth, clearly shocked by what was unfolding. Margot finished removing her microphone and placed it carefully on the couch. She stood there for a moment, composing herself, choosing her words carefully. I genuinely feel sorry for you, Savannah. I don't know what happened to make you this bitter, this determined to tear people down, but I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Because this, she gestured around the studio, sweeping her arm across the set. This isn't journalism. This isn't holding people accountable. This is just mean. This is using your platform to hurt someone, and I can't imagine that brings you any real satisfaction. How dare you? Savannah stood up now, her face red with anger. How dare you come onto my show and lecture me about journalism? I've been doing this for decades. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, and countless celebrities far more important than you. You're just another pretty face who got lucky. Craig stepped between them. Okay, that's it. We're done here. Margot, I'm so sorry about this. This isn't how we conduct interviews on this show. Speak for yourself, Savannah spat. I'm not apologizing for doing my job. Your job is to attack guests, Hoda said incredulously. Since when? My job is to ask hard questions, Savannah retorted. Something you two clearly don't have the spine for. Margot shook her head slowly. You're confusing asking hard questions with being needlessly cruel. There's a difference. A good interviewer knows how to challenge their guests while still treating them with basic human dignity and respect. You've shown neither today. Get out then, Savannah said, pointing toward the exit. If you're so offended, leave. We don't need you. I already told you I was leaving, Margot replied calmly. And for the record, I've done hundreds of interviews. I've been asked tough questions, challenging questions, uncomfortable questions. I've never once walked off a set before. That should tell you something about how far over the line you've gone today. She turned to Craig and Hoda. I'm truly sorry you had to witness this. You've both always been lovely to me. We're sorry too, Hoda said softly, looking genuinely distressed. This shouldn't have happened. As Margot started walking toward the exit, Savannah called after her. You're making a huge mistake. Walking off this show is career suicide. You'll regret this. Margot stopped and turned back one last time. The only thing I regret is not standing up for myself sooner. You know what the saddest part of all this is? I actually used to respect you. I used to watch you and think you were an example of what a strong, intelligent woman in media could be. But today, you've shown me that you're just another bully with a platform. How dare you call me a bully? Savannah's voice was shaking now. Whether with rage or something else, it was hard to tell. I've worked too hard and too long to be spoken to this way by some actress who thinks she's above criticism. I never said I was above criticism, Margot replied, her voice measured and calm. But there's a difference between criticism and character assassination. You haven't criticized my work. You haven't asked about my creative process or my preparation for this role. You've attacked me personally, questioned my integrity, made inappropriate comments about my appearance and my private life. That's not criticism. That's a hit job. Several crew members began applauding quietly, which only seemed to infuriate Savannah further. The sound started with just one person, then another, then several more. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was unmistakable. The crew, the people who worked on this show every single day, were showing where their sympathies lay. Everyone shut up, Savannah yelled at the crew, her voice cracking slightly. This is my show, my set, and I'll run it how I see fit. You all work for me. Remember that. Actually, Craig interjected, it's our show, all of ours. And right now, you're embarrassing all of us. Savannah whirled on him. Are you seriously taking her side? She's a guest. She'll be gone in an hour. But you and we have to work together every single day. Think about that. I am thinking about it, Craig said quietly. And I'm thinking about how I'll have to explain to my kids why I sat here and said nothing while you bullied someone on national television. The color drained from Savannah's face. You're being ridiculous. All of you. She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? This is what she does. She plays the victim, makes herself look sympathetic, and makes me look like the villain. You're doing that all by yourself, Hoda said softly. Savannah, I love you, but you need to hear this. What you did today was wrong. The way you treated Margot was wrong. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what to say. Savannah looked around the studio, seeing the expressions on everyone's faces. The camera operators, the producers, her co-hosts, even the makeup artists standing in the wings. Everyone was looking at her with a mixture of shock, disappointment, and discomfort. Some were shaking their heads. Others had their arms crossed. A few were whispering to each other, their eyes wide with disbelief. The collective judgment was palpable, hanging in the air like a thick fog. She was surrounded by people, yet completely alone. "Fine," Savannah said, her voice brittle. She was breathing hard now, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "Everyone thinks I'm the bad guy. Fine. But mark my words, when the ratings for this segment come in, when the clips go viral, when everyone's talking about today's show, you'll all be thanking me." Controversy drives viewership. That's the reality of this business. That's how television works in the real world. You might not like it, but it's the truth. "If that's what you think this business is about," Margot said quietly, her voice cutting through Savannah's rant like a knife, "then I'm glad I'm leaving. Because I'd rather have integrity than ratings. I'd rather be kind than controversial. And I'd rather walk away with my dignity intact than stay here and let you destroy it for clicks and views." And with that, she walked off the set, her head held high, leaving behind a studio full of stunned people and one increasingly isolated host who still couldn't seem to understand what she'd done wrong. As the door closed behind Margot, the studio remained silent. Not the comfortable silence of a commercial break, but the heavy, oppressive silence of collective shock. Savannah stood there, breathing heavily, looking at her co-hosts, the crew, the cameras that had captured everything. Her hands were trembling slightly, though whether from anger or adrenaline or something else entirely, nobody could tell. For a moment, just a brief moment, something flickered across her face. Was it regret? Realization? The dawning understanding of what she had just done? But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by defiant anger and stubborn pride. "Well," she said, smoothing down her jacket with shaking hands, trying to regain some semblance of control, "I suppose we should go to commercial." But nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They all just stared at her, processing what they'd just witnessed. The transformation of what should have been a light, promotional interview into something dark and ugly. The complete abandonment of professionalism and basic courtesy. The public humiliation of a guest who had done nothing to deserve it. Craig finally broke the silence. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to have a serious conversation about what just happened here." "There's nothing to discuss," Savannah said sharply. She couldn't handle the heat, so she left. "That's on her, not me." "Savannah," Hoda said gently, "do you really believe that? Do you honestly think you did nothing wrong here?" For a long moment, Savannah didn't answer. She looked around the studio again, seeing the judgment in every face, the disappointment in every expression. She could feel the weight of their collective disapproval pressing down on her. The makeup artist wouldn't make eye contact. The camera operators were whispering to each other. Even the intern in the corner looked horrified. And in that moment, isolated and defensive, and surrounded by people who had just witnessed her at her absolute worst, she doubled down. "I did my job," she said firmly, her voice louder now, almost shouting. "And if none of you can see that, then maybe I'm working with the wrong people. Maybe this entire team needs to be replaced with people who understand what real journalism looks like." The weight of those words hung in the air, heavy and ominous, because everyone in that studio knew that something had fundamentally shifted. Lines had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Words had been spoken that couldn't be unspoken. And the repercussions, whatever they might be, were only just beginning to unfold. In the hallway outside the studio, Margot walked with steady steps, her publicist rushing to catch up with her. Her hands were shaking slightly, the adrenaline of the confrontation still coursing through her veins. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, could feel the heat in her face. But her head was clear, her conscience unburdened. She had stood up for herself. She had refused to be diminished or disrespected. She had drawn a line and refused to let it be crossed. And while she didn't know what the fallout would be, while she couldn't predict how this would be reported or what people would say, she knew with absolute certainty that she had done the right thing. She had honored herself, and that was worth more than any promotional appearance could ever be. Back on the set, the silence continued. The bright studio lights that had seemed so normal just an hour ago now felt harsh and exposing. The familiar couch where countless celebrities had sat for friendly, easy conversations now felt like the scene of something uncomfortable and wrong. And in the center of it all stood Savannah, still convinced of her righteousness, still unable or unwilling to see what everyone else could see so clearly. That sometimes, in the pursuit of being tough, of being uncompromising, of refusing to go easy on celebrity guests, you could cross a line. You could go from being a hard-hitting journalist to being someone who used their platform to hurt people. Someone who confused cruelty with courage, aggression with asking the hard questions. Someone who forgot that there were human beings on the other side of those questions. People with feelings and dignity and the right to be treated with basic respect. The morning that had started so normally, with the usual pre-show preparations and casual banter, with coffee and makeup checks and script reviews, had transformed into something nobody could have predicted. A routine celebrity interview had become a masterclass in how not to treat a guest. A friendly morning show had become the stage for a confrontation that revealed something darker beneath the polished surface. The cheerful facade had cracked, and what lay underneath was ugly and uncomfortable and impossible to ignore. And as the crew slowly began to move again, to whisper among themselves, to process what they had witnessed, one thing was clear to everyone in that studio, except perhaps Savannah herself: that what had just happened would not be forgotten quickly. That the image of Margot Robbie walking off the set with dignity intact, refusing to tolerate disrespect, would stick in people's minds far longer than any promotional soundbite ever could. In those final moments before they cut to commercial, before the producers began their frantic damage control, before the phones started ringing with calls from network executives and publicists and journalists who had somehow already heard about what happened, there was just that heavy silence. The silence of people realizing they had just witnessed something that crossed a line. Something that felt less like journalism and more like a public display of contempt, dressed up in the language of holding celebrities accountable. Something that would haunt this show, this studio, and everyone involved for a very long time. Margot was gone, but the impact of her departure lingered in every corner of that studio, in every uncomfortable glance, in every awkward shuffle, in every whispered conversation. She had walked away, but in doing so, she had left behind a question that nobody seemed able to answer. A question that hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. When did asking tough questions become an excuse for treating people poorly? When did being uncompromising become indistinguishable from being unkind? When did we decide that entertainment value was worth more than basic human decency? And as Savannah finally sat back down, her movements stiff and mechanical, as the crew prepared to continue the show as if nothing had happened, as everyone tried to move forward from what they'd just experienced, that question hung in the air, unanswered and unavoidable. The cameras would keep rolling. The show would go on. But something had fundamentally changed. Something had broken that couldn't be fixed with a commercial break or a carefully worded apology. And everyone in that studio knew it, even if nobody wanted to say it out loud.